your 1/4 inch seam allowances. So you can see we've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance here that matches up, and we've got more of them right over here, just a little bit further down. And I just wanted to kind of review how to match up these seam allowances and how to do it by implementing some little tips and tricks, like using a Frixion pen or a water-soluble pencil or things like that. So let's go ahead and go over some of those tips and tricks and some of the things that we can do to help make that a little bit easier based on what we are sewing together. So we are working on the Live Well Live Strong quilt. Tell me where you guys are from. It's so good to see you guys online. I love being here every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon Mountain Standard Time. I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. Let me know where you guys are tuning in, where you are, and be sure to say hi and let me know how you're doing. So we have got this is the Live Well Live Strong quilt pattern, and it's available at stitchesquilting.com. There's things to learn whether or not you have purchased the pattern or not, or working on the quilt. So we're talking about piecing together our quilt blocks after we've sewn them, making sure they're square, and then also making sure that we've matched those seam allowances where we need to see them. Hi, Laura from Ohio. It's good to see you. It is feeling like spring here. We are definitely still getting some rain and showers here in Utah, but I love the feeling of spring, and we've had a great time. Hi, Liz. It's good to see you. Hi, Jane. I just love seeing you guys. I am doing great. We got to celebrate Luke's birthday this last week. He turned 25, and so we had a good time doing that. So anyway, so the Live Well Live Strong quilt, yes, I am feeling absolutely great. And I hope you guys are feeling in really good. Yes, I know last week I cut out and I tried to work on some things with my computer. I have to have a really super fast computer that can stream these videos live, and so that's something that I'm working on. And on Monday it cut short, so I'm here and I've hopefully addressed some little memory issues. And Dolores, it's so good to see you. I love seeing every single one of you guys. Okay, let's change the camera view, and I want to talk about, we're doing the foundation paper piecing version of the Live Well Live Strong quilt that's 20 inches by 20 inches, and you can see the paper on the back. But I'm going to use this to kind of help you guys figure out how to put together the different segments of the quilt and the different units as you sew your quilt top together. Yes, Luke had a great birthday. It was really cute. So let's go ahead and switch the camera view to the overhead view. So I am working on, so let's go ahead and take a quick peek look at the Live Well Live Strong quilt. So, and I guess I could take away some of these extra blocks here so that you guys could see this a little bit clearer. So when you sew together the Live Well Live Strong quilt, you're sewing it together in different sewing units. And so what we're doing is you have one of the first units in the pattern is to sew this row together right here. And then you're going to sew together this row, okay, this segment in the pattern, this unit of 6 blocks right here. Then you're going to go ahead and sew together this section, these 3 quilt blocks. So the Grow quilt block, the Belong quilt block, and the Boundaries quilt block. So you're going to sew together these different units of the quilt blocks, okay? And then you'll be able to assemble it together. So when we sew together these 6 blocks with the shine block, this side of the quilt is going to be ready to sew to this side. So over here, you're going to sew together this row right here, sew together this one and this one. Then you can attach this to the strength quilt block, this row to these, and then this one on top, and then this section below. So that kind of just gives you a highlight of, yes, this is a sampler quilt, and we're putting together lots of different quilt blocks, but it kind of gives you an idea of the puzzle of how you assemble the quilt. Hi, Colleen! And you guys, thanks for wishing Luke a happy birthday. He will so appreciate that. We had a lot of fun, and we actually had to do an MRI on his birthday, so on Monday, and so he and we went out to dinner, just the two of us, after his MRI that was like at 5:30, And then but we celebrated it on the Sunday before, and then he had a little friend birthday with just two of his little disabled friends, so it was pretty cute. So anyways, okay, so we're working on this unit right here. So and I'm trying to help you guys understand how to make these 1/4" seam allowances match up, because you can see there's a lot of 1/4" seam allowances for these points to actually match. And you can also see right here, we want these 2 points right here to match too. Right here on this little love quilt block, you don't have to worry about matching the 2 sides together, but you do want to match these points on this side because we've got some other straight blocks here. So what we're going to do today is, so far I have sewn together this segment of it. So we've got the power quilt block, the safety quilt block, the calm quilt block, and the hope quilt block. And I want to show you that I really didn't have, I lined these up and I didn't have a perfect match right here. And for me, I really like mine to be kind of perfect. Let me go ahead and hold this up closer to the camera. So this is something that I will go ahead and unpick right here and kind of re-stitch my lines there. I definitely got a match in terms of this point is there. Okay, that's an accurate point. I've got a match right here. So this is some advanced piecing. And I've got a perfect point here. I've actually have a perfect point right here, but these 2 points aren't matched up together. So this I will go ahead and unpick, and I will kind of shift it around so that that will match. So those are the types of things that we're working on right here. So let me go ahead and take away our little tiny one, because it's fun to be able to see that. You can make the Live Well, Live Strong quilt in the teeny tiny version. So as you could see on that other quilt block, we are now going to sew together the choices quilt block and the love quilt block, because of course making good choices in our lives, or choices, having intention with our choices, helps us feel a little bit better. Okay, so right now what I'm going to focus on, let's set this unit aside, is I'm going to focus on sewing these together right here. And you can actually have these points match up right next to each other. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring this over. I'm going to flip my little quilt block around, and we are going to use this water soluble pen or use a Frixion pen to help you see if you need to match up points on either side, that those points are still can still match up. So I'm going to show you guys how to use that too. Now I want this to intersect with that point right there, and I'm going to go ahead and study that, make sure that that's a good intersection there, and I'm going to pin. I'm going to pin on the side with the choice quilt block, because I want to be able to sew right through that intersection of those seams. So you can see where those have X'd off that seam allowances, and I'm going to want to sew right in the center of that. So I'm going to match that side up. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to make sure that this side matches up, and I'm going to line that up just ever so carefully, and I'm going to stick a pin in it. So let's go ahead and do that right here, and right like that. Okay, so now as I'm sewing this together, I'm going to want to actually pin my 2 sides. And if something isn't just quite right, remember you're working with triangles. This is a triangle right here, and you're working with different shapes and different pieces of fabric. So if you need to have just like a little bit of a pull on one of your cotton fabrics, there is just a slight stretch to that. Can you see that we've got a little bit more room on this love quilt block, but I can stretch this triangle just ever so slightly to have that actually match up the way we want it to match. So I'm going to stick a pin in that where I want that to just kind of, so I can ease in that space of where I'm going to do that. So right here, I'm going to have just a slight stretch. You may not think cotton is stretchy, but when you have that cotton fabric cut on the bias, there is a stretch there no matter what. Okay, I'm going to want to use an accurate 1/4 inch seam and sew through these stitch line intersections So I'm matching the point, the top of that, of the top of the outside 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so here we go, and it's so fun to see those quilt blocks come together. You can slow down when you're going over your thicker points of fabric that you have seam allowances so that you can be a little bit more accurate. So let's go ahead and take a peek at this. You can see here that I've gone just a hair to the right side of that intersection, okay? That way I should absolutely be able to see that point. And you can see now, as we have laid these together, there's a little bit of puckering on this side, but I'm going to go ahead and press this and set the seam allowances, or set my threads in, and kind of give a nice little pressing there on that side. Let's open this up so you can see there's really no puckering in there. We have really kind of nicely pressed that out so that, and the seams, your thread is set. Let's go ahead and give a press between the two quilt blocks, and we've got things matching up really nicely. Let's go ahead and maybe open up this one a little bit more, and you can see that we've got a great match right there. I think that looks absolutely fantastic. Let's go ahead and sew this now to the bottom of this unit, and then we will have this section of the Live Well, Live Strong quilt top put together. Sometimes I'm bad about trimming my seam allowances and my extra threads that are coming on. In fact, I've got a surprise for you of a new Live Well, Live Strong quilt top that we've sewn together, and we had it on the long arm, and it's a white and black version, and you can actually see some threads showing through. So we're having to unpick some of our long arming, and then re-cleaning up some of the threads that we had going on there, because we're using a white batting and a white backing and a black and white quilt. Okay, over here, when we're piecing this together, we want to actually open up this seam allowance. Instead of having that fold over to the side, I'm going to open this up so I can see easily where that intersection is. So let me go ahead and do that for you guys. Okay, does it sound like I'm talking loud? I will go ahead and talk a little softer, you guys. Thank you for letting me know that. Okay, so you can see right here, I can see now my seam allowance with that pressed open. So press your seams the way you want them to be so you can see where to go. Now, I have seam allowances on this side to take into consideration right there. And I have seam allowances on this side that I want to take into consideration. What I am going to do is I'm going to use a marking pen. Use a Frixion pen, or use, this is a water-soluble pencil. I actually prefer my Frixion. And I am going to mark where the top of that other quilt block is, and where I kind of want to match that seam allowance on this other side. So let's go ahead and do some marking here. I can see through that fabric, but if I'm at a good consistent 1/4 inch seam, so you can see I marked that right there of about right where I want to see that come across, and that will then match that 1/4 inch seam allowance on the other side. And I'm going to mark over here on this side so that I can see a little bit better where that 1/4 inch seam allowance is. So let's go ahead and pin this a little bit more now that we have things marked. And I'm not going to pin all the way in to my seam allowance, so I don't have to be constantly pulling out my pins as I'm sewing. I can keep a nice steady pace as I'm piecing these together, and I won't have that stopping and starting where I could possibly, maybe lose that 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's just what I like to do, okay? So this side is ready to connect those two. Let's go ahead and look over here. On this side, there's really nothing to match, so I am matching together this 1/4 inch seam allowance up here. I can see this clearly right on this side. I'm going to press that open so I have a good match there. And if you don't feel like you can get that pressed open all the way, like in this situation, I can use my marking pencil to actually mark where that seam allowance actually is. So right here, I can't quite real comfortably open this all the way up because I've actually stitched some of my seam allowances inside there. So let's go ahead and mark this, and we can use our actual ruler as we're marking this. And this way you'll have a little bit more confidence as you're coming around and you're making this match. Now we've got a blue pen on blue fabric. Over here, I'll definitely be able to see this on the gray fabric. I can look real closely at that blue pen. This is when your Fix-On pens, they usually come in like a pack of 6. So you've got different colors, but I can see that little shade of that blue as I'm stitching here. It might be difficult to see. I don't know where I set down my pack of Fix-On pens, but I recommend, if you don't have any, pop on Amazon and grab some Fix-On pens. Once again, I'm going to make sure that I'm kind of going the right direction with this seam allowance right here. Okay, let's go ahead and pin this now that we've identified that. And I'm going to get a good pinning. So do pin. It just helps. Sometimes it feels a little bit redundant, but you do want to get a good pinning in there. I also feel almost like this is a pretty slim 1/4 of an inch seam there, but if I check out my ruler, it's actually pretty accurate. So I'm going to, sometimes you can check and see and make sure you have enough room and space as you sew those together. So let's go ahead and sew this. Remember, I'm peeking through. I can see my other seam there, and I've marked it with my pencil where I would like to idealistically go across. And this is a water-soluble pen. Often you want to make sure that you test any pen or manufacturer on your fabric and make sure that it does come out. With a Fix-On pen, just the heat of your iron will take out that color or the point that you've got right there. And there are water-soluble pens and things that you can use too. So there's lots of different options and things out there on the market. Okay, I have someone calling me. I need to not answer that. Let me go like that, and then I'll mute my phone. Might be a customer. Okay, these are where my 2 blocks come together. I'm gonna make sure I've got a nice, easy seam allowance. I can see my lines right here where to hit the top of that quilt block. So hopefully my little points will match. And some people are really particular about their points matching, and some people aren't. But this is a way to try to get the best possible match with the least amount of frustration, right? We don't want a lot of frustration there. Okay, I'm going to make sure I've got that matching on the tail end here. There we go. Okay, let's pull this out. Of course, this is a live video. So, yes, you've lost your... Yeah, I know. I need to clean up this filming room and see, because sometimes I don't always sew in this filming studio right here. And so I'm sure I've set them down in another spot. Let's go ahead and take a look at this and give it a good press. So you can see right here, that looks absolutely beautiful. And these points right here look absolutely spectacular. And I always press. I have a pressing mat right here, right next to my sewing machine. And I move it if I need to cut fabric. I actually put my sewing machine on my cutting mat so I can easily just navigate everything. And you can see here that I've got my 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. We've got some extra space right along here, but that's just fine. And I've got some extra space right here. But we do have a true 1/4 of an inch seam, and things are matching, and they will lay nice and flat. So you can see this is that particular unit. Here is the small quilt of the Live Well, Live Strong pattern. So we just sewed together this section of the quilt top, and I can now attach the shine quilt block to this one right here. And once again, we're going to want to make sure that we match these things up. So let's go ahead and let's turn back to the front camera. It's so good to see you guys. I hope these tips and tricks can help you. I will be back on Friday to go ahead and show you a little bit more of sewing together the classic version of the Live Well, Live Strong quilt. We have 26 quilt blocks here, so it's a sampler quilt to help you build skills as you sew along, and your piecing skills as you sew along. It comes in the 60 by 60 version hanging behind me, but it also comes in the negative space versions and other versions too. So I'm going to get this quilt top put together for you guys. I'll show you more of the different section and units on Friday, and then we are going to domestic sewing machine quilt this 60 by 60 inch version of the Live Well, Live Strong quilt top. So I'm going to show you how to domestic machine quilt this on your sewing machine. It is not that big of a quilt, and I know you guys can get it pushed through. If I can do it, you can do it too. So, Amanda, great question. It's going to start really, really soon. I can't wait to see everything. I'm just so glad that you are here, and it's wonderful to see you guys. And I will be back on Friday with these different units for you. Talk to you later. Have a good one.